All right, hello, great hunts. I'm going to teach you while loops. So to get started, we're going to talk about while loops in Java. What are loops? Loops are used in programming to repeat the execution of code instead of writing the line of code over and over again. There are many instances where we don't want to write the same code over and over again. It's going to feel very repetitive, especially if we need to do it like a lot of times, like more than 1,000 times. So we have created a way to repeat certain lines of code. Okay? And one of the features or one of the concepts that we can use is a concept called while loops. All right, so I want to show you a little code example here. So I have a variable called int. It's called countdown. It's set to 5. And we're going to say, well, while this condition here, where our countdown is greater than or equal to 0, we're actually going to output that value countdown and do a countdown minus minus. Okay, so what this program does is actually just counts down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then it will terminate and end the program. And let's do a little line by line analysis. So first and foremost, I've created a variable called countdown equal 5, which just means we have set an outer variable, which is outside of our while loop, to help us with our while loop. Okay, and this line of code here, there's lots going on. It's our looping structure. So while is a keyword in Java. It helps us to start a looping structure, and inside the brackets, we must have a Boolean expression. And it only executes the code inside while the condition within the brackets are true, as in while the Boolean expression is true. Unlike an if statement, a while loop will continue to execute the code block as long as the Boolean expression is true. And at the end of it, we have countdown minus minus, which just allows us to decrement our countdown variable by 1 at every loop. So on this code here, it's going to output 5. Then after it outputs 5 into the console, it's going to make countdown go down by 1. So once we reach here, our variable countdown should be 4. Then it goes back up, rechecks this condition again. It's going to notice that value of 4 is greater than or equal to 0. So it outputs 4 and subtracts 1 from it again to become 3. Goes back up to our countdown while loop condition here. And 3 is going to be greater than or equal to 0. Therefore, it outputs 3 and subtracts 1 from it again, so it becomes 2. Countdown is still greater than or equal to 0, so we output 2. Countdown is 1 now. 1 is still greater than or equal to 0, so we continuously go down and up and down and up and down and up. That's where the looping concept comes from. And we get to print out 1. We do countdown is equal to 0. And 0 is not greater, but it's still equal to 0. So it still makes that countdown condition to be true. So we output 0 and countdown becomes -1. That's when this entire condition actually becomes false. While loop says, oh, my condition is false, I'm not going to execute the code within my code block, but rather move on from it. So this program here is going to output 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and it'll be done counting down from number 5. Okay, so let's do some formalization. I'm going to teach you a little definition here. What does an iteration mean? So iteration is an instruction or code being repeated until a specific end result is achieved. So anytime you do a loop, you are doing some sort of an iteration. How do we format a while loop? You use the keyword while. You write your Boolean condition here, and as long as that condition is true, we're going to execute the code within it. And we must have curly braces starting and end of it as well. There is a concept called an infinite loop. What is an infinite loop? Infinite loop is a loop that never ends because the Boolean condition of the loop never turns to false. And now let me show you an example. I have an example here where I have a string variable called value and it's equal to hello. And it says here, while my value is equals to hello, as in while this variable is equal to hello, we're going to output hello. And unfortunately, there's no way for us to actually modify or change our Boolean condition. So it actually calculates that to be true. It outputs hello, it goes back. This is unfortunately true again. It's going to output hello. And this is where most often kids will see just a bunch of the same string or message being outputted onto their console over and over and over again because they have not modified their Boolean condition to become false at some point within their while loops code block. So don't fall into that trap. But if you see that, that concept is called an infinite loop. There are some ways for you to use a while loops to guarantee that you will end at certain points. So for you to avoid having infinite loops, one method I like to use is using a counter. So you set a value like you set a starting point and you can either work up or down towards a endpoint of a condition. So let's talk about that. I have an integer variable called counter and it's set to 0. I'm saying while counter is less than or equal to 10. So I have a smaller value and I put a condition of counter is going to be less than or equal to a higher value. As long as that condition is true, we're going to use and run these lines of code within our while loop. Okay, so we're going to output the counter as that counter. But this line right here is increasing our counter variable by 1 at every loop. That's why that it will never be an infinite while loop, because at a certain point, counter variable is going to grow so large that it's actually going to be not even equal to 10, but greater than 10. So we made a way where it started from a small number, and we're going to increase that every time this goes up and down to the point that it will make this condition false. Okay. So this will actually output 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then once it hits 11, it will execute and end the code. There's another way to do so where we can use a Boolean variable to control when to end a while loop. So I have made some variable declarations here. I have created a user input string and a Boolean variable called loop, and I set it to true. And it's right now, I technically have an infinite loop. I say while loop is equal to true, I'm going to continuously run this code. And it's going to output hello world continuously. However, after I output hello world, I'm actually going to ask them to input some a user input from the user. I'm going to ask, would you like to end the loop? Yes or no? And I'm going to grab a user input. And if that user input was equivalent to yes, we're actually going to set the value of loop to false, which makes this false. And that helps us end our while loop. Okay. This kind of allows us to avoid an infinite while loop, but technically this can go on forever if the user never wants to exit. But most often users do want to exit at a certain point, and you can use this kind of structure to have some sort of a control within your while loop. Okay. So let's try an example program. So right here, we can create a program that uses a while loop. Let's see here. Factors of a number. So I'm going to write a little code that determines and calculates factors of a number. So for us to do so, we need to have some utils. So we're going to say import java.util scanner, capital S, I believe. And since we're using a scanner, we also need the following. We're going to create a scanner item called reader. It's going to be it's going to be equal to new scanner using the system.end feature. And boom, we have a scanner. So for us to find the factors of a number, we're going to need to read a number. So let's say system.out.println. Please enter a number. And on the next line, we're going to write that we're going to have an integer number is equal to reader.next int, capital INT, semicolon. Awesome. We have set up a number that we have, and we're going to try to find the factors of that number. To do so, I'm going to create a divider variable called 1, because that's the smallest possible factor of any number. And basically, we're going to say, well, while a certain condition is true, we're going to repeat some process. And I want divider to be less than equal to number. Basically, the concept is, well, 1 is always going to be less than equal to our number, as long as our number was actually a nice number that they have inputted. But also, I know that 1 is my smallest factor, and the number itself is going to be my highest possible factor. So our divider, or possible factor, only exists in this kind of range. But just to make sure that my while loop ends, I want to make sure to write divider plus plus. This increases the divider variable by 1 at every loop. Okay. So to check if a number is a factor, we can actually utilize the module separator. So right now we're going to go if number modulus divider is equal to 0, then we know that this divider value is in fact a factor. So we're going to write system.out.println and say that divider plus is a factor of the number that we were analyzing, which was number, semicolon. and we're going to increase divider. So let's see how this program runs. So to our right here, we're going to enter value 12. And it's going to say that 1 is a factor of 12, which we already knew, and 12 is a factor of 12 on the bottom, which we already knew as well, because number itself is always a factor. Then we found that values of 2, 3, 4 are also factors of 12, which probably made this if statement condition be true. Then it also found that 6 is a factor of 12 because it made this condition true, and ignored numbers like 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 because those numbers did not make this condition to be true. Inside here, to start off, our divider was indeed less than 12. 1 is less than or equal to 12. That made our condition true. It executed all this code, and we actually go back up and recheck the condition again with our divider being updated to. Then it will update to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then when it's 13, it would notice that divider is not less than or equal to number anymore, but is rather greater than number. So it made that condition false, which made it not do any of these calculations or lines of code again. Right? So this is an example of how you can use while loops in your code. I'll be giving you some worksheets and problem sets for you to try. So definitely try them out. First and foremost, if you get stuck, you can always use ChatGPT to ask how to do this, how do I do this in Java, what's wrong with my code for sure. Or you can actually ask me questions by either visiting me in my office or sending me an email. Anyways, thank you for listening, and until next time.